Hello! Welcome to the Ketogenic Diet Show. My name's Mary Beauchamp, and today I want to introduce a really special person that has had an incredible journey with the ketogenic diet in her life, and it has been a way that she has transformed her health. And I am so excited to introduce Suzanne today because she's going to share with you some of the changes that she's seen in her health since she started implementing a ketogenic diet. So I want to hand it over to Suzanne and just open the space for you to share with us kind of how you got started, what inspired you, what's happened since you started, and just anything that you want to share with the world about your journey with the ketogenic diet.
Okay. Well, hi everyone. I started ketogenic way of eating last April, so it's been about 9 months now. And I really started to solve a weight problem. I had been gaining weight. I'm 47, and I had been gaining weight since I was about 26 years old, fairly steadily. Every year I was weighing a little bit more. But in the last 6 or 7 years, I got remarried. My husband is a foodie, loves to eat. He's a great cook. And I felt like I was eating what we would consider a healthy diet. So it was very high in carbs, but I didn't realize that it really was. I would wake up and have a kale and banana and kiwi and vanilla protein powder smoothie to start my day. I would have a salad typically for lunch. Dinner was a couple glasses of wine a lot of nights, some quinoa or brown rice, chicken, bunch of vegetables. But I was overeating carbs for sure. I was having bread in there, and lots of times I'd settle down to watch TV at night with a big bowl of popcorn that I just didn't think was very high in calories and would be fine. And I put on about 30 pounds in the last 5 years since I started living with him. So I found myself about 240 pounds, and I've suffered from an autoimmune disease, psoriatic arthritis, since I was about 17 years old, and I was getting progressively worse to the point where shortly before I started the keto way of eating, I had gone to my rheumatologist. My labs, my inflammation markers were just through the roof, and I was in so much pain that I really thought I was headed for walking with a cane, needing some assistance. And I was about 45 years old, or just before my 45th birthday, and it was devastating. I mean, the weight was making it worse because a lot of my inflammation is my knees and my hips, but the disease itself was flaring up more times than not. So I was on all kinds of, I was on immune suppressants and anti-inflammatories and still in a lot of pain. And I had other things going on that I didn't think were related at all. I had struggled for 15 years with high cholesterol, high triglycerides, high total cholesterol. I had elevated liver enzymes, and of course, all the inflammation markers that they tested on me regularly were very high, sometimes 4 times, 5 times normal. Another unrelated thing that was starting to bother me was cysts in my breasts that were getting very large and needing to be drained on a regular basis. So it really all came to a head with this kind of like, I felt like I was in crisis. I was also struggling with fibromyalgia on top of it. So I was in a lot of pain, and I had gone to the doctor, had some blood work done, and this is my primary care doctor, last April. And she said, you've really got to lose weight. Every time you come in, you've put on 10 pounds, and you really need to lose weight. And I said, I know, but I feel like I'm eating healthy. I'm going to the gym. I'm on the treadmill. I'm doing the elliptical. And I don't feel well enough to do any more exercise than that. And I'm still putting on weight. So she said, a lot of people are having success with a very low carb diet. Now, she did not tell me about any of the other health benefits that went along with this. It was really just for, you'll feel better if you lose some weight, and a good way to explore would be a low-carb diet. And mentioned ketogenic, and I went right home and read about it because I was at that point where I really wanted a massive change in my life and my weight. So went home, researched. My husband was traveling. I told him that night, I am changing the way I eat. I'm going to give this a try. And the very next day, without knowing very much, I cut carbs out of my diet completely. I dropped down to less than 20. I had done enough reading to understand what vegetables I could incorporate. And even though it was completely different from the way that I had been taught, I knew that eating the way that I had been, which was not very high in protein, not very high in fat, was making my cholesterol go through the roof. So why not try eating fat and see what it does to my cholesterol? I was scared to death that it was going to make it go even higher. But I found it pretty easy to stick with the diet. I was the only one in my family doing it, but very quickly, I'd say within 3 weeks, I had lost 15 pounds probably, and I had kind of adapted to it, and I was starting to feel the energy that we get after you become adapted. And the rest of my family decided to start eating that way also. So we stopped buying bread, and people that still wanted to have some kind of sandwich were doing it with lettuce, or they were doing low carb wraps that are like 4 net carbs. So everybody kind of modified. And I had lost 20 pounds in the first month, and I felt a big, huge improvement in my inflammation, which I was not expecting whatsoever. So within 3 months, I was due to go back to the doctor, and I had lost about 35 pounds. I had my blood work repeated, and this is where my whole perspective about this diet completely changed, because I knew that it was successful in making me lose weight. But I'm going to tell you some of my numbers. My total cholesterol in April of 2017 was 285, and it had dropped to 193, which was in the normal range for the first time since I was 28 years old. So we're almost 20 years. My triglycerides went from 418 to 142, which was also in the normal. I mean, yeah, it was also in the normal. My HDL had gone down. My LDL had gone up. It was also not high enough to be good. It had gone from 42, which was put me at moderate risk, to 51, which was a normal. My liver enzymes, my ALT, had gone from 78 to 38, which was the first time it had been normal, also in 20 years. My CRP, which I think they use as a marker, it's an inflammation, but they use it as a marker for your risk of heart disease. They want it less than 1. Mine was 8.8 in April, and it had gone to 0.5 3 months later. My sedimentation rate, they use to monitor my arthritis. Normal is 0 to 20. Mine had been at a steady 90 to 100 since I was 18 years old. It had never been normal in all of my life since they had been measuring it when I started complaining about the arthritis, and it had dropped to 9.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I was convinced at that point that my diet had contributed to my years of struggling with autoimmune and fibromyalgia. Now, my doctor wouldn't agree that it was caused by my diet, but if I went in today and did blood work, they would not come to the conclusion that I had an autoimmune disease. There's nothing in my blood work at all that suggests I do. Now, that can change. I know that you can go through flares, but it's been 9 months now, and I have not felt any joint pain. I have no symptoms of fibromyalgia, and I have more energy than I've had since I was 20 years old. So to me, the diet has been the key to everything. It's just been amazing. So I tell everybody about it. I literally, if I know the person, I talk to them about it. I'm tempted to talk to people I don't know, but I haven't done that yet.
Till today.
till today. I mean, I want to tell people at the gym because I see these people that are really struggling, right? And that's how I was. I mean, I've lost 70 pounds now, and I've gained 12 pounds of muscle. That's, from working out. So really, I've lost about 80 pounds. And I'm still 30 or 40 pounds away from where I want to be, but I've been losing it at a very steady rate of about 10 to 12 pounds a month. And it hasn't been hard. So when I see these people really, really working hard, I want to tell them that they should continue working hard, but if they cut those carbs, that it would actually work, that they would see a difference and feel a difference. So I have converted maybe 10 people now, family members and close friends that have adopted this way of eating. I have a son who's lost about 45 pounds. He wasn't overweight to begin with, but now he looks fantastic. My husband has lost about 30 pounds. My daughter's lost 20 pounds. So, and it's really so much more than the weight. I mean, that's what spurred me to do it. But if I had known about these other benefits, I would have done this a long time ago. I think there's a whole long list of medical specialists who should be trying this first with their patients rather than the prescriptions. I've gone from 5 or 6 different prescriptions down to one that I take occasionally now. And I'm hoping to be off of that with my rheumatologist's permission in a few months. She said, let's wait till July to do that. But I feel amazing. So I was listening to a podcast recently, and Gary Taubes is the author. He was being interviewed, and he said that he was passionate because he couldn't unsee what he had seen. And that's how I feel. There's no way I would go back to you won't catch me 10 years from now grazing all day on carb-rich foods. It's just not going to happen. This is a permanent way of life because of the changes that I've experienced. I never want to go back and feel that way again.
Yeah.
So.
Wonderful. That is so inspiring, so incredible to hear your story, Suzanne. Thank you so much for sharing that with the world. I was going to ask you if you had a specific book that you love the most, how you kind of got started, where you went to get information that you found was valuable, and what sort of tools you use in terms of keeping track, or if you use any tracking tools, what does that look like?
Well, it's interesting because I have a boss who has been eating the keto diet for, I'd say 20 years probably. So he knew a lot about it and very gently had conversations with me over the past few years that I just didn't hear or really believe or think it really worked, or that's you, not me. And it sounded very restrictive to me. But he had at one point suggested a book by Gary Taubes called
Good Calories, Bad Calories?
No, it was the one How We Get Fat and What to Do About It. Something like that. And there had been a new one called The Case Against Sugar. So I went back to him after I started this and decided to start this, and I asked him for those books. And he had his out on loan, but ordered both of them for me and said they'll be here from Amazon tomorrow. And I found those really, really informational and answered a lot of the questions about why. What is it about sugar? What makes that calorie so different from a fat calorie or a protein calorie? Because I had been taught that weight gain was because you didn't burn as many calories as you consumed. And so I really enjoyed learning the science behind it and how important insulin is in this whole equation and keeping insulin levels low. And really discovered that I was most likely insulin resistant, although I have never been tested for that. But I had all the markers of that. And how grazing was not the best thing for us, especially if you're grazing on popcorn or pretzels or whatever. So those books were really informational. I also am do a lot of research. So I got on, of course, I had gotten on Pinterest and found all kinds of keto recipes, which those were the things I started cooking at home and making in batches to bring to work for lunch and leftovers for breakfast. And I also got on Facebook and saw that there were a lot of support groups out there and asked to join probably 15 of them.
That's a really great point. I'm glad you brought that up because there are a lot of great groups. And I just started a group that I wanted to invite everybody to join as well, which is called Ketogenic Diet for Beginners. And I would love it if you came and visited the page, and it's brand new, so come and join us, and we're gonna go on this journey together where we can support each other all the way. So thank you for bringing that up.
That's fantastic, and I'll definitely join that one too. I love reading people's success stories. A lot of people will post before and after shots, and that was really important to me. I wasn't coming across people that were saying this didn't work for me. It was every single story I read was, this has been life-changing for me. And a lot of people had stories that were like mine. So I've really enjoyed those. There's a lot of recipes. There's also a lot of questions, which I also wanted to know the answers to. And within a couple months, I found that I was able to answer a lot of those questions, which was really cool also. So I narrowed it down to 5 or 6 of the groups that I liked best because I was getting so much in my feed. I unjoined some of those groups, but they're the first things I like to look at today. And then I've gotten on iTunes and done searches for ketogenic diet and found all kinds of podcasts, subscribed to them, and then I commute about a half hour back and forth to work every day, and I listen to those. I feel sometimes like I'm a little bit obsessed, although I think that everybody that's involved with this feels that way sometimes because I'm not the only one that's participating in these groups and listening to these podcasts all the time. I haven't gotten tired of it, and I still have so much to learn about it so that I can share that with other people. And the more I hear it, the more science I retain when I go look up the answers for myself again, so I can do a better job explaining why it works to people. So those would be the main resources. I do track. At the beginning, I tracked every single thing that was suggested by my doctor, and I just got the Lose It app. I know a lot of people use different apps to track and set my goals for fat and protein and carbs. I got those off of a website. I just put in ketogenic macro calculator and put in my height and weight and how much I wanted to lose, and those were determined for me. I think it's important to redo those every 10 pounds or so because mine have changed over time, and I have reached a plateau. At one point, someone in one of the groups suggested go do your macros again, and they had changed, and that got me past that plateau. So religiously, I put every single thing into Lose It for probably the first 6 months, and then I felt like I knew so well what everything was that I can do it in my head throughout the day, and I don't put everything in anymore. I also take pictures religiously in a bathing suit or underwear, and I also take measurements. So in an app like Lose It, they have a place where you can set goals or track, what your thigh measurement is, what your waist measurement is, and I have done that since day one. I just started that, and I have kept up with it, and it's really inspiring. Sometimes the scale doesn't move, but everything's fitting better, and then I can prove that to myself and see, oh my gosh, I've lost 2 inches on my waist in the last few weeks. And so the progress has been steady, whether it's the scale or the inches, and that keeps me extremely motivated.
That's great. Yeah, sometimes the technology can really help to keep us on track. And I use a tracking app called Chronometer, which is the one that Dr. Mercola talks about in his book, Fat for Fuel. And it's really simple to use, but I know that there's a lot out there that can do the same thing. Mm-hmm. So it's nice to get other people's perspective on what's been working for them. Thank you. Mm-hmm. So is there anything else that you would want to leave people with if they're considering doing this and aren't quite sure if it's right for them?
Well, I think we need to trust that this can work and will work for most people, even though it goes against what we've learned about nutrition and what we've heard from our doctors over the years. I mean, I know that there's a very good chance that my doctor would not have recommended this. I got very lucky that I have a doctor who has some experience with this particular way of eating. I'd say 95% of the doctors out there are going to counsel you to eat several small meals a day and to be counting calories. And so we've been conditioned to think in a certain way, and it's very hard to overcome that. I know that several people that I've talked to about this have really struggled with doing it because it doesn't feel right to be eating red meat, adding fat to things. When you're overweight, you feel like you need to cut back on fat. Or when you have high cholesterol, you feel like you're supposed to be not having any fat in your diet. So contrary to what your instincts are telling you because of the way you've been conditioned, give it a try. Mm-hmm. And also hang in there for the first few weeks. A lot of people have been on a high carb diet, and it's hard to get used to not having those sugar fixes. A lot of people had it worse than me because they're used to desserts and things, and I really didn't have that in my diet to begin with. It takes about 3 weeks to really feel the energy surge. It takes about 3 days to get over what they call the keto flu, right? That real kind of headaches and feeling tired and you don't feel right and this isn't working. And about 3 weeks for you to really think, you know what, I can do this. I don't have sugar cravings anymore and I feel better than I have in years. So hanging in there and really giving it a try before you relapse and go back to your old way of eating, I think it's important to just really hang in there.
That's a great point. It's so much about redefining our belief systems and our programming and our all of the things that culture has sort of placed on us in terms of what's healthy and what's not really has to be re-examined. And that's probably the hardest part about making a lifestyle shift, is that we are driven by these unconscious patterns and we don't even know why we're reaching into the cookie jar when we're not hungry. But it's just so ingrained and habitual. So to undo and unwind those patterns takes a big commitment. And in my programs, I really like to address the belief system and the commitment that we have to ourselves, because that's really what gets us through that first phase that's really tough. And it's important to be consistent and stick it out and see what happens on the other side, because I like to use the analogy of, it's kind of like climbing up a sand dune. You know, you climb up 2 steps or 3 and you slide down, and this metabolic shift takes on average about 14 days for most people. So you don't necessarily feel bad for 14 days, but it's a rewiring and a reprogramming, not only of your mental capacities, but also your metabolism is having to reach way back into the archives of what we know in our wiring, in our DNA, to recall this information. And so it's just a reminder that it's okay to our metabolism. It's a reminder that we actually know how to adapt in a state of starvation or fasting or famine. So we were designed for a cyclic lifestyle of feast and famine, and we have not been able to honor that in our cultural conditioning. So to remind our metabolism that, oh yeah, I know how to do this, that's what that 14-day window is all about. And that's generally the time when people start to question, am I doing the right thing? So I would just encourage everybody out there to stick it out until you make it over that hump. You get to the top of this sand dune and you have a beautiful view of the ocean, and you get to sort of cruise into your vacation from there. And making this a lifestyle is the goal. This is not a quick fix. This is not something that you're ever going to want to go back to eating the way you did. So I I'm just so glad that you shared that because it's such an important piece. So
Yeah.
thank you.
I was thinking when you were speaking too, I have such a different feeling about food and hunger now. So it is the reaching in the cookie jar and you not really understanding why. That doesn't happen anymore. I don't have those sudden like, oh my gosh, I'm so hungry. I haven't eaten and I have to have 6 pieces of pizza because I'm starving right now. I don't get starving anymore. I have a hunger that's a very slow hunger. And from the very beginning, a couple weeks into it, I realized I need to refuel. It wasn't about eating because I was bored or stressed or anything like that anymore. I feel like I've got a little more time on my hands because I'm not doing that searching through the refrigerator trying to find something really quick because I'm so hungry. It just doesn't happen anymore. It made me realize what food really is. And that I'm really thankful for, because I was one of those people who would skip breakfast most of the time. If I didn't have a smoothie, I wasn't eating anything. And then I was so hungry at 2 that I would find myself driving through the drive-thru and having something that was lots and lots of carbs, because I was so hungry and probably could have eaten 2 big burgers because I had gotten that hungry. I just don't get that hungry anymore.
That's a really, really great point you bring up, because what the ketogenic diet is so good at is balancing the blood sugar so that you get off of that blood sugar roller coaster, which has you in these peaks and valleys of blood sugar spinning out all day long, sort of in this carbohydrate addictive spiral that is very difficult to get out of unless you get that blood sugar stabilized. And once you tap into your own body fat stores, or shift over to a much higher dietary fat intake, you will be able to draw from that energy source, and your blood sugar will remain stable. So you don't have those crashes, those peaks where you're feeling very energized and then you feel very tired. And then one of the things that also happens when we get in the peak phase of our blood sugar dropping is that we feel very anxious. We have maybe a little raise of heart rate. We feel a little sweaty. Heart starts to beat a little fast. You get very crabby, grumpy, all those things that make us go to the drive-thru. So the key with this diet is you never let your blood sugar get imbalanced, and then we have a stable mood. Our brain is constantly being fed ketones, which it prefers over glucose. And then once our body gets into this resting phase, it can actually start to heal itself and go and repair the damage that may have been caused over the years of not eating so good. Mm-hmm. And that's what you're seeing is the benefit of your body actually giving you a house cleaning.
Right.
You know, you're cleaning it's like taking your car in to get an oil change. You're cleaning your fuel filters. You're changing your oil. Literally, you're changing the oil in your body of years of eating any kind of trans fats or hydrogenated oils or any of these processed vegetable oils, which we think are healthy. We're taught are healthy, are actually clogging up our system completely. And so when we eliminate that incoming onslaught of unhealthy fats and we start putting in the healthy fats that our body can actually understand and recognize, those fats get shed, and they allow your body to let go of the fat that it's been storing and start repairing the damage that's been done by not eating the right kind of fats. So it's as much about what you eat, what types of fats you eat. It's not just eating a bunch of fried chicken. You know, one might think that's a great keto item because it's high in fat and it's high in protein, and really we need to stay away from those unhealthy fats and trans fats and fried foods and any oil that's ever been heated. So there's a very limited amount of healthy fats that are on that list, and it's really important that we stick to it so that we can really get those bad fats that have accumulated in our cells, in our blood vessels, in the places that they shouldn't be, in our liver, and get them out. So this is a huge process of detoxing because fat stores toxins, and so toxins that are lodged into our fat cells get mobilized. And that's another reason why this 2-week period at the beginning sometimes has you feel a little flu-like sometimes it's called the keto flu. You may have heard that term. It's also known as a die-off or detox phase. And that is why this is happening, because your body's finally letting go of those toxins that it's been holding on to. And the other thing that happens with this first 2 weeks is that when you start to starve the pathogenic bacteria in the gut, they have to go too. So this is also known as a die-off reaction, which contributes to this detox. So not only are you flushing the pathogenic bacteria out of the gut, but you're flushing the toxins that have been stored in your cells for years. So that's what's going on that first 2 weeks. So stay with it and be patient, and you will see a light at the end of the tunnel, and you're likely going to feel better than you ever have in your life. So I can't encourage you enough to just stick with it. And I so appreciate hearing your story, because so many people are curious and they want to know if it could help them. And the amazing thing about this keto diet is that it's not going to cost you anything, and you don't need a prescription. So you can go and start doing this tomorrow with a little bit of guidance that you can find in many different places. You can check out my website, ketogenicdietcoach.com. You'll find tons of resources, free information. You'll find a number of ways to get connected with guidance from me personally, if that's what you choose. And again, it's something that is not going to cost you any more money in your kitchen and your food bill for your family. It's, if anything, it may save you a lot of money. So that's the benefit of it. You're going to cut out all those processed junk foods, and you're going to start buying real, whole, healthy foods that will save you money on your food bill every month, which is just a fringe benefit. So anyway, thank you for bringing that up.
I would definitely agree with that. I think for my family, it's been a savings. I mean, we do skip most aisles of the grocery store now. And our cart is there's much less in our cart than there was before. But we are eating better and we feel amazing. But it's definitely been a savings for our family.
Can you say anything about how your children have incorporated this into their sort of psyche in this process for them? Because that's a big thing, big shift in their health that has gone on.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the main benefits that they saw was that they could eat whatever I was making or whatever my husband was making. So they did it for that reason. We've had so many discussions about the drawbacks to the carbs that I think that they have seen that and are thinking about their nutrition and their body. They've noticed such a big change in me with my health biomarkers that they know that it could be negatively affecting them. They now are a little bit more out on their own. So I have a daughter who went to college in the meantime. So she had been doing this for about 5 months before she went to college. And that's been a really frustrating thing for her because, of course, she lives in the dorms and she doesn't have great access to keto food. So we're having to have a lot of stuff that she can prepare in her room. There's a few stations that she could eat at. They have one that's a vegetable and meat grill type of situation, but the lines are really long at that particular station. So that's been frustrating for her, but she has been able to stick with it. Of course, she was very happy to be home for Christmas where she could eat our food for a month. But I do send her packages of good food for her too. But I think they do it much less for the health benefits than what, the weight coming off and feeling very good. And I know that for all of us, when you do have those little cheats, like over the holidays, I planned for mine and I knew that it would take me out of ketosis. I didn't know how bad I was going to feel. And so, the day after Thanksgiving, my fingers were so swollen and I felt so terrible that I kind of planned that it was going to be a weekend long thing because we had company for the weekend and I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to be careful, but I know that I'm going to go over my carb limit. I just didn't more than the Thanksgiving dessert because I felt so bad. And I know the kids are experiencing that too because they go out and they want to eat something normal, or in the dorms, the pizza line is shorter, so she grabbed a piece of pizza and you just don't feel good from it. So I know that that has really stuck with them. So I'd say more for the weight benefits and physically feeling better than it was for any particular medical. Although my son has noticed a big improvement in his gastric reflux that he's had his whole life. And I've got to think that something is connected with that. Mm-hmm. It wasn't so much particular foods, really all foods. He had it be from all foods, but he has noticed a big reduction in that. So I think that is probably connected also, although I'm not quite sure how.
Absolutely connected. Yeah, because again, you're not feeding the pathogenic bacteria in the gut, which are causing the inflammation throughout the whole GI tract and aggravating everything. So yeah, there's a definite connection between that. And that's something that I hear a lot from my patients, is that they have noticed that particular thing overall that was plaguing them because it's so uncomfortable that they've noticed a resolution in that. So it's pretty common, actually.
That's amazing. I just, in so many different areas of our lives, we've been touched by it and just not expecting that whatsoever.
I appreciate you sharing that your daughter is struggling in the dorm. My daughter is also off to college. I have another podcast that actually I interviewed her. You can find that podcast on my feed. But she has come to rely on something that I teach all of my clients how to do, which is high-fat drinks. And so she has a blender in her dorm, and we make some really high-fat herbal elixir drinks and smoothies and things like that. So that has been a saving grace, and it's something that is a foundational part of my life. And I teach all of my clients how to incorporate blended high-fat meals really into their diet, just to really save time and money and effort, and have just the thought of having to think about what am I going to eat now can be overwhelming. So the last question I wanted to ask you was, do you incorporate any type of intermittent fasting or fasting in your daily regimen?
So interesting that you asked that. I have recently started and found it much easier than what I thought I would. So a lot of people in these keto groups talk about intermittent fasting especially. And I didn't think that I would really be able to do that.
Because you thought you'd be hungry.
I thought I would be hungry, and also I've tried so hard to stick with my macros. I thought it would be hard to get them into less meals in a day too. So I started out by thinking, well, I could do 16 hours, but very easily did 18. And over the last couple months have done several times a month, but in the past few weeks, a few times a week, I've done 24-hour, which really haven't been hard at all. Now, it would be hard if I wasn't in ketosis, I'm sure. I don't think I would feel nearly as good, and I would be hungry. And so I read about people doing it that just practice intermittent fasting but eat a regular standard American diet, and I think, wow, that would just be really challenging. I don't struggle with it at all. Now, I just recently did 2 separate 3-day fasts. They weren't water only. I do what Dr. Jason Fung says. I used crutches. I had fat in my coffee in the morning. I didn't have any creamer, so there were no carbs, but some fat in my coffee in the morning. And I had some bone broth through the day. And so there was some protein in my day also, but no carbs. And I found those easy to do. I wasn't hungry. I was mentally hungry. I wanted the taste of food, and my mouth was hungry. And that's why I broke both of those fasts. The second one, I really thought, oh, maybe I could do 5 days this time. And for me, it's not so much about the weight, because I know the weight's been coming off steadily, and I'm not really in a rush. For me, I want to reset my insulin reactions to things, and fasting is one way to do that. And also for the benefits of the autophagy, which I've just started learning about and is fascinating to me. I can't believe some of the benefits of autophagy and some of the results that people have had. So I'm starting to get into it. I'm learning that it's practice. So most people don't start out doing extended fasting with no what we call crutches, right? Everybody starts doing it a little bit more, and then you can stretch those out and do it for longer periods. But I feel fantastic. And then, on my 3-day fast, I lost 8 pounds. I gained 4 of them back. I'm sure that it was, water weight. But I kept 4 of them off. And I think they say that you can lose about 1/2 pound of fat a day from a fast. So I work out when I'm fasted. I feel great when I'm fasted. Now, I work with a personal trainer, and he's appalled by this. He wants me to have, a red apple and a glass of juice before I work out, because he really believes that we should be burning glucose, and it's terrible for us. I've learned a lot of people have very ingrained beliefs about fasting and about the ketogenic diet, but I feel amazing on it. I know people's performance can improve when they are exercising in a fasted or a low carb state. So that's been my experience. I don't feel bad whatsoever. I feel amazing. The mental clarity that has come from the ketogenic diet, but also fasting, has been really good for me at work and in my personal life. And so I hope to do more of it. And I definitely see that it works really well for me.
That's
so
great. Wonderful.
I'm looking forward to doing more of them.
Great.
Yeah.
Yes. So the ketogenic diet is a fasting mimicking diet. So it's basically giving your body the message that it's fasting even when you're eating. So that's the benefit of the ketogenic diet, is that you get the benefits of fasting without actually being in a starvation mode. And so when you combine the two, the fasting mimicking with actual fasting or intermittent fasting, which I go into in great detail in my online programs, you have a triple benefit. And so the body is constantly in a state of repair and metabolic relaxation and autophagy and all of these other amazing benefits that we get when our immune system can actually be released to do its job. And when it can't do its job and these toxins build up, we ultimately will experience the immune system turning against itself, and we end up with an autoimmune reaction. So that's something that nobody wants to experience. And I highly encourage everybody listening to check out a movie called Fasting, which I just watched recently. I don't know if you've seen that yet, but it was really great, and it's a good foundational film about a lot of doctors that have experienced the benefits of fasting in their patient base. And so it's a great place to find some information on that. There's also a book called The Obesity Code that was written by Dr. Fung, who I love his work, and he goes into great detail also about fasting and the benefits of fasting. And he also has a book called The Complete Guide to Fasting. So lots of information out there. This is not new information. This has been around for 100 years, since Otto Warburg won the Nobel Prize for discovering that cancer cells metabolize differently than healthy cells, and clued in the medical community at that time that there was something going on with the metabolism of healthy cells that was different from cancer cells, and knowing that there was the difference was in the fuel source for the cells. So if we power our cells with what our body is looking for and not getting, we can see a tremendous benefit in our health. So I think that we're out of time, but I'd love to keep talking more. So maybe we can have you back in a couple months and just check in.
That would be fantastic.
See how things are going. And in the meantime, you can check out the Ketogenic Diet Show for more episodes. You can also find me on the web at my website, which is ketogenicdietcoach.com. I've got lots of programs and Facebook groups you can join and start to just dive in and see where it takes you. It's a journey, and everybody's different, and there's lots of ways that you can modify this to work for your lifestyle. It's not hard. It's going to make your life easier, guaranteed. And I hope to see you on the other side. All right. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for joining me, Suzanne.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you.